Goat Quest, one and all. It is another episode, another fine day, just outside of the Motor City in Detroit, where we are broadcasting. Goat Quest is the great debate. It's the bar stool debate. It's what you talk about on the living room couch or on the phone with your buddies. My buddy across from me is former NFL fullback and linebacker Tom Beer. Why are we important to listen to? Well, Tom not only was a standout All-American player at Wayne State with me, where we met when I was 18 years old. He was also the Detroit Lions' last player to start games both ways, both a fullback and a linebacker. We don't know. We're going to triple check on if any other NFL player has started on both sides of the ball in their same career.
I think they have.
But we do know this, and that is that Tom Beer is the last Detroit Lion. And it is fun in the Motor City right now with Detroit Lions football. It is alive and well. The draft just came rolling through. So football is in the air, and we're going to be talking a lot about it. But before I get into the minutia of what Goat Quest does and how these debates work, I'm going to allow Tom to tell you why I am relevant to listen to when it comes to these debates.
Well, you didn't tell me that I had to make you relevant. But Joe was a three-time All-American at Wayne State. He was the last player to have 100 tackles in 3,000-yard rushing seasons.
That is correct.
That is correct. Don't be fucking mouthing me now. No, you're mouthing my words. And he still, to this day, holds the NCAA record for rushes in a season.
That's right.
So
That's
whatever
right.
it is, 38.7 rushes per game or something. That's fucking crazy.
If your coach is dumb enough to keep giving the slow guy the ball over and over and take 3.8 yards per carry, then you can make it to the end.
Is that what it was? Did it come out, or was it 2.8?
It was 4.1, but it was
It was not 4.1.
It was a slow 4.1 yards per carry. I am definitely the slowest player in NCAA history to have 4,000 yards.
You know what I love? I love if there was somebody that we played against that would talk about you, they would say, that guy talks more shit than any human. Dude, every time you touch, I could hear you from the side. I played defense. I could hear you from the sidelines talking shit.
I would tell him, I would say, look, I run a 4.940 and you guys still can't stop me. What does that say about you?
Oh, God, you were funny.
Well,
you were funny.
Somebody had to.
But you delivered.
Keep it interesting.
You delivered. So
I went back and broadcasted at Wayne State. I was the color analyst on radio all the way through with my good friend Sean Belesian to the end of the 2011 National Championship run for Wayne State, Division II. But Division II didn't stop Tom Beer from making it all the way to the National Football League, the Shield. And we've had several. I mean, our conference produced a number of NFL players and some studs along the way. So it's a great football conference. And what we've done in our friendship after football has propelled these conversations because we get together, we drink some beers, the beer man. I'm Joe Willie, he's the beer man.
yeah.
And the debates rage about these kinds of who is the greatest of all time. Right?
Correct.
This is what guys who can no longer do what they love to do on the field do verbally with one another, joust each other verbally. And one of the categories that you look at when you think about who the greatest of all time is the one that we're going to approach today. Everybody talks about quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Right? Quarterbacks are the field general, and the way that the quarterback manages a team usually translates into W's on the scoreboard.
Much more important now than 30 years ago. Different game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was a coach's game, right? I mean, it was a coach's game. It was a scheme game in the early days of the NFL. And now the players and the talent on the field.
And the quarterback. If you got Patrick Mahomes, you couldn't beat anyone. But you're in every game.
Yeah.
You're in every game.
So when we factor these things, though, we look at a bunch of different categories.
Mm-hmm.
So just to help the audience kind of, because if you go on the website at GOATQuest.com, you're going to see that you get to create your own list. And your list gets aggregated into the overall crowd vote, right? So the crowd-sourced list is you participating at GoQuest.com. The way we think about it with the expert list and the way we're debating it is obviously their statistical profile. What do they look like on the back of a baseball card? The number of MVPs, were they most valuable players? Their championships, you got to win. The longevity of those championship seasons, how long could you do it? The competition that existed when you were trying to do it, because it's different, it's variable. Did you overcome adversity? Did you have injuries and challenges?
I think that's one of the biggest things for me for a quarterback. Can you win when you don't have your starters, right? That's the biggest, the adversity, right? People get hurt. It's the NFL. There's a billion ways to get rolled up in a pile, or you get hit out of bounds, or you pull a hamstring, or whatever that is. And the good ones win with everybody. They win with backups. They win with guys they pulled off of practice squad. So that's part of it too.
That speaks to leadership.
Correct.
Right? If you're nurturing your backup quarterback, right? If you're doing a good job as a player coach, when you're the leader and captain of a team, then the team can usually rise up and fill the gaps for you when you're missing a beat.
Yeah. There's just such a huge drop off between a starter at any position in the backup. And I was a backup, and I wasn't that good. But the drop off, they pay the guys that play the big money now. They're all making 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 million a year. And the backups are normally, they have to be cheap.
Yeah.
They can't be a good backup.
It's a salary cap management league.
It's a salary cap management league. Absolutely.
So
that's why draft picks are so important. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah. We
talk about, because you get people for cheap that are good.
Yeah. And
you get them for 3-4 years.
And we talked about your coach. Right, a quarterback. We're going to talk about quarterbacks today. A quarterback without a coach that puts him in a good position. A quarterback without an offensive line. Archie Manning running around for 10 years for the Saints for his life, getting sacked more than any quarterback. I mean, what would his statistical line have looked like had he been with a good coach, with a good offensive line? Well, there's a lot of debates that you can have about that.
Yeah,
I think the way I'm going to start this off is by looking at today's window.
Okay,
right. So the greatest quarterbacks of today, I don't want to start at the top of the list.
Okay.
All right. I want us to kind of debate the bottom, the honorable mention, and then move into the meat of it, because we're going to have a caller joining us, our former quarterback at Wayne State, Anthony Frederick, who is now the right-hand man of Matt Ishbia over at United Wholesale Mortgage. But many moons ago, he was playing quarterback for us. So we're going to get his opinion here in a minute. So let's start at the bottom. Give me your honorable mentions that didn't crack the top 10, Tom Beer.
Probably Justin Herbert. I'd say he's right around number 10 for me. Gosh, there's so many good. I've got Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Hurts at 6 and 7. They could be 2 and 3.
Yeah, I still have Jordan Love outside the top 10. I still have Kirk Cousins outside the top 10.
Dude, everybody has Jared Goff outside the top 10. Every list you look at, he's out of the top 10.
I got him tied for 10th with Brock Purdy, his nemesis in the championship game. But yeah, that's kind of the bottom, I feel like. There's guys that could, right? Does Trevor Lawrence have a comeback season and get back into the top 10? With all the weapons that Sam Darnold has in Minnesota, does he find a way to become a top 10 quarterback again? You can go all the way down to Gardner Minshew. I mean, he's got one of the best defenses in the NFL, and he's shown glimpses. Like, he could have a banner breakout season in Las Vegas.
Yeah, but he's shown glimpses. He hasn't shown consistency. I
want that haircut. I want that haircut in a Pro Bowl.
The ability to do it no matter who's playing, right? When you have all your starters and your offensive line is healthy, that's completely different. When you lose a Penei Sewell or you lose your top wide receiver, what do you do then?
It matters.
It matters.
The whole team matters. So let's move up the top 10 then. My bottom 5, Jared Goff, I mentioned Purdy. Just like you, I've got Hurts and Rodgers at 9 and 8 if you got a tie at 10.
I mean, that kills me to have Aaron Rodgers at like number 6. I think if he stays healthy, he'll have an amazing year.
I hope that you're right, because I think it makes for entertaining storylines. But, I'm going to try to keep my dislike for Aaron Rodgers
there's
as a
a lot
human
of-
being
there's a-
out
I
of
know.
the debate. His numbers speak for themselves. I mean,
They
the
do.
guy's an all-timer. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
He can scramble, but he scrambles smartly. I mean, he just sees things that other people don't see.
Yeah. Yeah. And my 7 and 6 going into the top 5 are CJ Stroud. I know it's only a small sample size of 1 year, but I feel like if we're talking about right now, who's playing at the highest level, the way he played at the end of the year, I put CJ Stroud in there, and that's hard for me to do as an Ohio State Buckeye, and Josh Allen at number 5.
I've got Josh
number 6, I'm sorry.
I've got Josh Allen at number 4, and I've got Joe Burrow at number 3. The CJ Stroud thing, he's played 1 year. I know it's I mean, he played well, and he played well in the playoffs, but we'll see what happens this year.
Small sample size.
Small sample.
So before we touch on our top end, we're going to plug into Ant Frederick.
Okay.
We called him Ant when we played with him.
called him Ant.
He's probably officially Anthony Frederick. To those people in the business world who know him as a top executive at United Wholesale Mortgage, Anthony Frederick. Tell us who your top 5 are as a former college quarterback. You're going to give us your all-time top 5.
Oof. All time. Well, first, you're too kind in the intro. I was average at best as a quarterback, and I was actually telling my wife last night I don't have a lot of regrets in life, but the one being your guys' quarterback on a team that I thought had championship caliber players, the best all-American running back, a great defense. I thought if you guys had a better quarterback, we could have won the GLIAC, could have been in the playoffs, but I got to live with that. But since you got me on here, not to talk about you want to talk about the top 5 of all time. Number 5 was a little bit hard for me. I went back and forth. Marino, Elway, Marino. Landed on John Elway. Just the sheer, arm strength, elusiveness, the mobility. He literally carried that Denver team early on in his career to the playoffs, kind of willed them through it. Obviously, we know that Cleveland helped and all the other things, but John Elway, number 5. People complain he didn't win a title till he had Terrell Davis, but personally, I think that kind of evens out. Over the course of a career, you win as many titles as you're supposed to win. Probably should have won a couple early on. So number 5, John Elway. Number 4, the Sheriff, Peyton Manning. When I thought about this one, he could have been Tom Brady, right? He could have been the greatest of all time if he didn't play in the Brady-Belichick era. It's just some classic games in the AFC championships together. Revolutionized the position to have an offensive coordinator on the field. He had some weapons as well, but I think he could have been Brady. If it wasn't Brady, it would have been Peyton Manning. Number 3, Patrick Mahomes. I know it's only been a small sample size, 6 years, but what he's done over the course of the 6 years, 3 titles. I don't know. It's a good question for you two as well. If he wins 5, does he go down as the greatest of all time, even though he didn't win 7? I don't know. And is it like he's had a bunch of weapons around him? He had Tyreek Hill, he had Travis Kelce, and then he had a bunch of mechanics and plumbers at receiver. So he's my number 3. He could be number 1 when it's all said and done. Number 2, Joe Montana, obviously. That goes without saying. The former GOAT, just Joe Cool. And I always think about him and think about, not only was he accurate, he didn't have the strongest arm, but like he threw his receivers open. And then the classic John Candy story just leads me to believe like he knew the moment. He knew what his players were feeling and said, you know what? Hey, guys, look, John Candy's up there. And just for that split second, they forgot about the moment and concentrated on laughing at John Candy and then playing a little football. And then obviously the GOAT, as we know it today, Tom Brady, 7 titles. Speaking of mechanics and, plumbers at wide receiver, all he had was really Gronk in that 1 year with Randy Moss, and it's been Tom Brady. I think everyone knows he's the GOAT. Just the courage under pressure. The ability to be super accurate, had a strong enough arm, wasn't that mobile. But I just think when you think all time and not only his, stats are unbelievable, his longevity is unbelievable, but just of all the quarterbacks we're talking about, probably the truest leader of the bunch. And I don't think when we talk about quarterbacks, we talk about the intangibles like grit and toughness and just the ability to lead people to do extraordinary things. So that's my 5. I'm sticking to it. Like I said, the 5th one was kind of hard with Danny Boy and John Elway, but we went with Elway because he's got a couple titles and Marino doesn't have any. So
I think that's the tough part for me when I look at all the names too, because we all got the same kind of names, right? We're really close. But back in the 80s and the 70s, they got to play with the same players every year. I mean, how many times did Joe Montana not have Jerry Rice to throw to? Never. He
Yeah.
always had Jerry Rice to throw to.
Yeah.
Look at Tom Brady.
But let's compliment Anthony for coming in with a hot take on the 5. He had good, solid reasoning behind it. He came up exactly like I expected him to come up, with a nice, tight roll and good background. You missed one. In my opinion, I think the missing piece of your 5 is Drew Brees. You look at Drew Brees' numbers. He goes 13 times to the Pro Bowl, more than any of them except Brady. And he wins a championship. He leads the league in passing 7 times, 2 times more than Brady during his career. And you know, of course, we know in 2018, he should have won that football game if it wasn't for the pass interference calls, and he'd have been favored in a second Super Bowl. So I look at Drew Brees, and I think that's the one that can get on the Mount Rushmore.
Who are you putting him in over?
I'm putting him in over Elway. Yeah, I've got Dan Marino. It's funny though that you say that, because my debate for Dan Marino and John Elway was at number 5, just off of Mount Rushmore.
Ah, interesting. And to the Tom, to the Jerry Rice thing, yeah, Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver of all time, but they also played in an era. Like defense has changed a little bit, as you know. It was a little more handsy back then.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I take that into account. And then the other thing I think of, did Jerry Rice make Joe Montana, or Joe Montana make Jerry Rice? Would Jerry Rice have been as good if he wasn't in that offense with Bill Walsh and with Joe Montana, and the anticipation and throwing in the windows when the window's not there yet? So good arguments to have. But to stick to defense, Tom.
It's a good point.
On your draft night, the big night.
I got you. Well, you're a quarterback. I'm not supposed to understand what quarterbacks do. I don't even like you.
It's a good point that you make, Anthony. Jerry Rice was clocked at 4.8 in the 40, so he wasn't beating anybody down the field after his 3rd year in the NFL.
Is that true?
That's after his 3rd year in the NFL, so he might have come in with a better time than that. Wow. But that is a true fact that he ran in his 4th minicamp. He ran a 4.8 40-yard dash.
Wow.
The other thing that I'll say that you mentioned that does, you know, when you look at the old school quarterbacks versus the new school, the Drew Brees, the Tom Brady, the Peyton Manning being the new school, they had different rules. The referees were protecting them in a way that those older generation guys never got. How much, Ant, before you go, how much do you think that figured into the longevity of some of these careers?
I think it definitely matters, and I think the way that people take care of their bodies nowadays, and then obviously with nutrition and coaches and everything, it's a different game. And I'm not saying it's easier or harder, but like example, I never seen Johnny Unitas play. He could be better than all of them, but I don't know. I only go on what the historians say, right? And it was a different game back then, so. Always a fun debate, and I think it was Michael Jordan said about LeBron, it's hard to compare players from different eras. And then, like I said, the question I leave you guys with, and maybe you talk on another day, but like if Mahomes wins 4 or 5 and continues to amaze people and do what he does that almost equal what Tom does at 7, or do you guys think it's just championships or bust? That's the only thing that matters.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think Mahomes is right there. I mean, if I had to slot him, if you put a gun to my head and said you got to slot him in right now, I'm slotting him in pretty close to where you slotted him in, because I do think that that's where he's going to project out to. But, you know, and I want to steal 2 more minutes from you, because this has been such a good conversation. If you give me 2 more minutes, who are your top 5 today? Mahomes is obviously number 1. Who falls in 2, 3, 4, 5 behind him?
It's interesting. I mean, obviously Mahomes. I think Lamar's up there, right? How do you not put Lamar Jackson in the top 5? How do you not put a healthy Aaron Rodgers in the top 5? Even though I can't stand him, I respect the heck out of him in his game. I think Tom had mentioned Justin Herbert. Like, is he top? I don't know if he's top 5, but like, you know, he's someone I think that doesn't get the due that he maybe deserves, and maybe because he hasn't really won anything yet. So. It's hard to, for me to pick a 5 now. I think Jared Goff, is he top 5? No. I think Jalen Hurts could be top 5, right? But is Jalen Hurts consistent? Can he stay healthy? We know what happened to them last year. So I think Brock Purdy's like the most overrated quarterback in the NFL right now. It sounds like, Joe, you love him. But not a fan of his. Maybe I'm just not a fan of the Niners. And as that position evolving a little bit, are we going to see more of the Justin Fields and the Caleb Williams, more of the mobility and versus your traditional Herbert, drop back 7 steps, scan the field and throwing bombs all over the place? It's an interesting conversation. So hard for me to settle on just 5, but I think the quarterback position is a lot of fun to watch in the NFL right now, and should be a pretty exciting season.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me.
We're going to switch gears, come back into the current list. Anthony teased it out for us there. The current list for me, Tom, and Anthony mentioned a part of why this top 5 rolls off my tongue the way that it does. Brock Purdy, it does have the knock of being a game manager right now with an embarrassment of riches.
He went to the Super Bowl.
He did. As a rookie, as Mr. Irrelevant, the last player drafted.
Yeah.
So he did what he had to do. So that's why I put him in my top 10. I have that Josh Allen sitting there at number 6. I'm going to give you 5 and 4, and then I want to hear where you come in. Mine are Dak Prescott at 5 and Matthew Stafford at 4. And I know that both of those are probably shocking to people, but when I look at a guy today, if I'm going into a season healthy, and I want to look at the other guys on this list, I think Matthew Stafford with his arm talent, when he's healthy, he gives me the best chance to win games and be prolific doing it as a passer.
My opinion is he gives you the opportunity to be in a game, not win. There's a difference. And he did have game-winning drives. I mean, he was here for how many years? But and then you get into the argument too. Would you rather have Jared Goff or Matt Stafford? Jared Goff wins. I don't know. There's something about him, and I watched all the games. And he looks good, and he makes tight throws, and he's got a cannon, and he's a good leader. He just didn't win here. That's all I got. That's all I got is that he didn't win.
He didn't fit Detroit. I don't know why that is.
Detroit had Calvin Johnson. He didn't fit a 6'5" receiver that can run a 4.3.
Yeah, I know. I know it's a really nebulous statement, and it doesn't have any teeth in it. I think it was good for him to move on, and I think it was good for us to have him move on. I don't think he was going to win here for whatever reason. It wasn't the right winning fit.
Would you rather have Jared Goff or Matt Stafford?
If I just got to win one football game, I got to tell you, I'd still rather I'd have Matthew Stafford.
Why?
Because I do believe that when the lights shine bright, Matthew Stafford has proven that he can win Super Bowls.
He's proven. I've seen him throw a lot of picks for touchdowns too, and so does Goff. Goff's thrown some picks for touchdowns games we lost last year.
Jared Goff has an opportunity to prove me wrong this year. If he wins the Super Bowl, then that script flips pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right now, I'd have to take Matthew Stafford. And then I go into my top 3, but before I do, who's fighting for the top 5 with you?
I got Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, my top 5. I don't know why I have Justin Herbert in there. Something about him with
Harbaugh.
Something about him with Harbaugh, I think, is going to be a really good mixture, and I think that they're going to be very successful. I just think Harbaugh wins. I just think he's got the quarterback thing down. Whatever that is. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, he win with a guy who was immediately out of the league as soon as given all the civil rights issues and everything else with Kaepernick, but disappeared after Harbaugh, and Harbaugh took him all the way to the Super Bowl.
Correct. I also got Josh Allen, just a stud. Strong arm, great leader. Then I got Joe Burrow, for obvious reasons. He's got a lot of weapons. Lamar Jackson, who's amazing. And my top one is Patrick Mahomes. I'm
100% in line with you, and I hate when we are thinking with the same brain. But Lamar Jackson is a pure stud. I got him at number 3 only because I think Burrow is going to rebound from the injury and reclaim that number 2 spot in the league, and he is the only one who has shown that he can beat Mahomes on a regular basis. So I tip the hat. He also, that LSU season, I'm getting some carryover love. It's probably the greatest college football season I've ever seen a quarterback lead a team through. They just annihilate everybody in the toughest conference in America. And then he rolls right into the Cincinnati Bengals organization and turns it around very quickly. A lot of credit going to Zach Taylor, the head coach there too. But Burrow's in a position to be very good with Jamar Chase and the other pieces of the puzzle there, T. Higgins. Mahomes is on a different planet, though, right now. And that's why what I was trying to say when Anthony called in is that I would have to slot him in the top 5, but maybe even the top 3. I mean, right now, he's already got the Super Bowl credibility, the Pro Bowl credibility, and he's got the eye test. And when we get into the all-timers, we're going to talk about the eye test. There's guys who you just looked at and went, that guy's different.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no one like him. No one. I mean, it's something about his ability to scramble under pressure and feel a blitz or feel the pocket caving in. He's just got it. And that's why I love Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is able to scramble and make things and he makes it look easy, and it's not easy.
No, it's
right?
not.
It's not easy.
I'm going to give you a couple that I think we need to watch. Justin Fields, if he wins the job in Pittsburgh, I love what Mike Tomlin does. He just wins. He just finds a way to win and put people in a good position to win. I think even with Lamar Jackson still doing it at a very high level, with Zay Flowers and the other Bateman and the rest of the pieces that they've put around Lamar Jackson, I think he's going to be throwing the football more. I think Justin Fields might be the quarterback leader in rushing this season if he wins the job over Russell Wilson. Please, God, someone put a tranquilizer dart in the neck of Russell Wilson and put him to sleep for a season. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. Am I right? I mean, when I look at this team, I'm thinking, Mike Tomlin, you're too smart to end up in the doldrums of one flash of a good game where he looks like the old Russell Wilson, and then 2 weeks of dog shit, and then 3 games where he kind of middles his way through them, and then 2 weeks of dog shit. It's just going to be a roller coaster.
You know, the funny thing is, when he was in Seattle, he didn't have dog shit. He played well every game. Most games, you'd watch him. I kind of like a Patrick Mahomes. Like, this guy gets it.
But
But all of a sudden he gets to Denver and he falls apart. They give him $250 million, and he just loses his mind.
Not just the money. I know people are going to blame it on the wife, right? He's got this celebrity wife. He wanted an office of his own. He got this big contract. He separated himself from the players. And I think he looked at it and said, I'm going to be the next Peyton Manning. He went from the Colts to Denver and built this thing at Denver. He looked at it and said, I can do that too. Well, you know what Peyton Manning didn't do? He didn't separate himself from the rest of the team. He didn't put himself on a pedestal, right? He was in it to win it the Denver Bronco way, not the Russell Wilson way.
What was it? He had like 5 or 6 people, like an entourage, right? And Sean Payton's like, get them the fuck out of here. What?
Please.
Dude, yeah, if you were playing good, you could have 20-person entourage.
I know,
right?
and I hope
when you're playing like shit, get him out of the locker room.
I hope he mea culpa'd his way into Pittsburgh, and he is one of the great ones of the era. But I just want to see him go away.
That still surprises me. It still surprises me that he was that bad in Denver. He was just consistently bad every game.
Yeah.
Every game.
Yeah.
I don't know what he got out of the 250, but they cut him.
Yeah. He was a cash tumor.
Oh my God.
And they had to cut it out.
Wow.
The other ones that are going to be under the microscope are Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams for obvious reasons. You win a Heisman Trophy, multiple Heisman trophies between them, and they're going to be picking up the pieces. Obviously, Chicago did a lot more than the Commanders did to put pieces around Caleb, but they're rookie quarterbacks, and we know what rookie quarterbacks do in the NFL. So other than C.J. Stroud in recent history, it hasn't gone very well.
It's funny. It's you see people that come into the NFL that you would think would be a good fit. See the drafts every year. You never know until they get there, until they put on pads. They can look good without pads. They look good running routes.
What was the old quote? Look like Tarzan, play like Jane?
Play like Jane. Look like Tarzan, play like Jane. I look like Jane, and I didn't play like Tarzan, but I didn't play like Jane. But yeah, you see it all the time. It just maybe they're a step slow, or their ability to read is a step slow. And a step slow in the NFL is pack your bags.
Yeah, not for long, NFL.
Not for long if you're a step slow.
All right. So now it's the GOAT all time, right? So now we're digging into that barstool debate on the couch. The obvious number one is, I don't know how much more time anyone can spend, given that they just roasted him and that all that controversy about how that went sideways for his family.
Yeah.
Let me give his family a little heads up. This is the greatest professional football player in the history of the sport. So take solace in the fact that you are the or members of Tom Brady's family, and that's a pretty special place to be right now. 7 Super Bowl victories.
And didn't start every game at Michigan for the last 2 years. What a crapshoot.
He was the 4th string quarterback when he arrived in camp in New England. He was the 4th string quarterback.
It's a complete crapshoot, the whole draft. I mean, sure, there's players that you know are going to be good. Like when we drafted Penei Sewell, they knew he was going to be a Pro Bowler, I believe, when they drafted him. But to miss on like a Tom Brady, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
The greatest coaching decision of Bill Belichick's life is the fact that he decided that he had the guts
to bench
Bledsoe when he came back and go with Brady all the way. I mean, look at that. You rewrite history with Drew Bledsoe in that spot, and I like Drew Bledsoe. He's a hell of a player, but he's not winning 7 Super Bowls.
No question.
The most amazing statistic about the GOAT, and then we'll move on to the rest of the list because we kind of did this in reverse order.
Mm-hmm.
Not a single snap, and you've probably heard this, not
not.
one single snap in his career did he ever take where he was not in contention to win the Super Bowl. Meaning he was never out of playoff contention for one snap of his NFL career. That's how good Tom Brady led his football team.
Yeah. Wow.
It'll never happen again.
Didn't
There'll
know that.
never be a career. I mean, you never say never, but I don't think you'll ever see another career where excellence can be so singularly personified as it is in that statement, that every single snap of every single game.
Even in Tampa,
he was in it to win it. They were alive.
they were never eliminated when he started.
He was
No
never eliminated from the playoffs for a single snap. Now that statistic's been overrun, but it's been used a lot. But I want to dig into the rest of the list. Who's your favorite? Right? Like, I mean, I don't know if Tom Brady is anybody's favorite. He's been so over-polarized.
Yeah,
Who was your favorite quarterback growing
Joe
up?
Montana was my favorite quarterback growing up. And I like Steve Young, too. I used to love the 49ers. But, on my list, my number 10 is Terry Bradshaw, but he was in a completely different scenario and time of football. It was completely different. They ran the football a lot. And they threw the football a lot. He had great receivers.
When we compare eras, and we should talk about this, when we compare eras, we try to take into account the context of the way the game was played at their time. Statistical relevance is a really poor value to measure some of these guys because they didn't have the same statistical opportunities. It's like when people look at the old time hockey players and they say, "Well, did you see? Look at the skates and the equipment that guy's." It was a different game, but everybody was playing that game. So against his peers at that time, having to work with the tools that he had to work with, like Terry Bradshaw had a embarrassment of riches with Chuck Noll's teams. He did exactly what was asked of him every single weekend.
Yeah, like just thinking of a quarterback getting hit blindsided. You can't do it anymore, right?
Yeah. Can't hit him below the knee.
So you don't have to worry about it. Not that you don't have to worry about it if you're Jared Goff, but if you're Terry Bradshaw, you're worried about your head getting taken off completely.
Yeah.
So
it is a candy ass. It is a candy-ass rules movement.
When you're worried about getting your head taken off, it's a different game.
100%.
It's a different game.
The clock is ticking in your head in a completely different sense of urgency.
No question. It's like getting in a fight. If you know that you're going to get in a fight, it's completely different than I can talk shit to you and me and you will never fight. That's different.
Yeah.
right? And that's the same thing with getting hit and not getting hit from the backside.
Yeah. Although you did tear my helmet off in practice one time.
I did tear your helmet off in
and
practice,
the coaches had to have us separated.
You deserved it.
You had 2 chances to tackle me on that play because of how slow I am, and I still got
No,
it.
you tried to block me on some type of a pass rush.
Cut block. Cut
It
block.
was a
It's
cut
my
block.
favorite.
Yeah, you tried
It's
to
my
fucking
favorite.
cut block
It's the only
me.
thing I can do.
That's why I had to rip your helmet off.
Yeah, well, okay. We digress. I'm going to dig in here. I got a couple of groups I want to talk about.
Okay.
The first group is the modern group that doesn't make my Mount Rushmore. They don't get into my top 4, my Mount Rushmore, okay? So the modern group, Dan Marino, eye test. He just looked different. What a passer. To me, the phrase arm talent is born out of people watching Dan. That's the first time I heard somebody say, wow, the arm talent.
We played against him when he was in Miami. I can't remember what year it was, probably 94. I think I might have played with him one year. And the sound of that ball coming out of the pocket is different, way different than Scott Mitchell.
I love it. The sound of the ball whizzing past my ear.
It just had a different sound. And I was standing, I can't remember who I was standing next to on the sideline. And my buddy, I think it was Shane Bonham, he said to me, "Do you see how fast that ball came out? I mean, it was like a laser."
Yeah.
It was just a different sound, a different look. Everything about it was different.
The other guy who had there's several. All of these guys are guys who had incredible arms, but the one that's most well known for having that same kind of a cannon is Brett Favre.
Sure.
He's another one, Super Bowl champion, 11-time Pro Bowler, 297 consecutive starts in an era just before the quarterback protections went haywire and all the rule changes came into play. So he still had to suck it up through the toughest times.
I think when we played against Brett Favre 9 times. So 4 seasons and 1 playoff game. And we didn't win one.
You didn't win one.
We didn't win one.
Brett Favre, that's a good statistic. He was 9-0 against you.
9-0
That
Not
hurts.
really against me.
That stings.
Against the line. Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think we beat Green Bay in the 90s once. Wow. Maybe in 91. Maybe we did.
Wow.
Maybe in 91 when we went to the playoffs. But
Anthony brought up the other one, and that's John Elway. Big arm and had great feet. Probably the first great running quarterback that's on this list where the feet were just a huge part of his game. He retired as the all-time winningest quarterback when he retired. Of course, he's been passed by numerous players since then, but 2 Super Bowls, consummate winner, got a good steakhouse out there in Denver. I mean, John Elway, you can't complain if you're putting him in a list of the top 10. The last end of that group for me, you mentioned Terry Bradshaw already, so I won't get into his 4 Super Bowls and 2 MVPs. But the last group is Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Troy Aikman. All of them winning, Jim Kelly being the only one that went to 4 and didn't get a Super Bowl win. Steve Young wins 3 Super Bowls, but he was a backup on the first one. And then Troy Aikman wins 3 Super Bowls, but was he the game manager as a part of one of the greatest football teams of all time? Give me that little quick. Those are guys you played against. Those are your peers.
Yeah, in Dallas, obviously he had a stacked team from receivers to offensive linemen to defense to everything. So was he good? Yeah. It's tough to match quarterbacks up with running quarterbacks, right? Like, even Jared Goff. Is he an effective quarterback? Absolutely. Does he run? No, at all. So, that part of it's tough, but he's got a great arm and he's got great vision, and I think that's more important. But there's times where it'd be great to see him run for 40 yards, right?
Oh, yeah.
When it's open, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But Troy, I really like Steve Young. I thought he had great feet. He had great vision. He was a great runner. Great player, and he had a lot of talent around him.
I just want to give you a quick block of the old timers because, again, like we said, era to era.
And I looked at some old timers that I never saw play, and I have no idea. I really don't know.
I couldn't believe some of these stats when I dug into the research, and I've seen a lot of these guys in NFL films, right? I mean, I'm a student.
Back then too, they used to run the wing T. You know what I mean? It was a different.
But once the passing game was born, right, and you could say that was Sid Luckman or Norm Van Brocklin or Otto Graham, but that's the era that we're talking about. Otto Graham won 7 championships. He's equal to Tom Brady in championships. Now, people don't give him credit for the 4 championships that were in the All-American Football Conference. And people say, well, that's kind of like the USFL, right? But different from the USFL, when his Browns team moved from the All-American Conference into the NFL, they won it the first year. So this wasn't a lower football conference. It was the Baltimore Colts came from that conference. The San Francisco 49ers came from that football conference. So when those 2 leagues merged, his 7 titles to me are legit. He goes 8 Pro Bowls, right? And the Browns lost 3 Super Bowls during his era to the Detroit Lions, right, in the 1950s.
In the 50s.
So Otto Graham has got to be on your list. Johnny Unitas, I've told you the story. I mean, this guy got cut. He got cut, and he had to borrow money, working at a factory, drive down, make the team in Baltimore, and then he goes on to break every passing record in football. Sammy Baugh didn't just win 2 Super Bowls and go to 8 Pro Bowls at quarterback. He led the league in interceptions one year at safety because he played both ways. He had 11 picks and led in 1943. Sammy Baugh led the league in interceptions. He led the league in punting, and he led the league in passing.
Sounds like Joe Goff.
Oh, no. This is at the highest level of the game, not down the street at Wayne State at Forest and Cass.
Yeah.
We're talking an amazing special teams and both ways. He was a leader of the National Football League. Norm Van Brocklin, 9 Pro Bowls. Bart Starr wins 5 championships in 7 years. 5 out of 7. I mean, you could argue that that's not going to be done again. Although Patrick Mahomes is going to try to do it here shortly. Sid Luckman won 4 titles. Sonny Jurgensen, Roger Staubach lost 4 years of his career to go to the Navy. He comes back. His 4 best years coming right out of college. He's got to go and serve time in the Navy because he was in the Naval Academy back then. You had to do the full commitment, and he comes and wins 2 Super Bowls and has an amazing career.
Hence the tough comparison, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got a guy that's working in the offseason. They didn't even used to lift weights back then. They did, but nothing like we do now.
No.
Or train, they used to have cigarettes at halftime.
Kenny Stabler said I play better on 2 hours sleep.
Absolutely.
The snake.
Yeah.
You know, Dan Fouts was one of my favorite quarterbacks. He could sling it all over the field. Joe Namath wins
Joe Namath used to drink the night before games. He admitted it.
He wins the 68. It predicts the game. It's one of the greatest wins in football history. Of course, Johnny Unitas had 2 of the greatest Super Bowl wins or championship wins in the history of football. So that's our block of guys who didn't make it. My Mount Rushmore, because we only got a couple of minutes to sum this up, is Peyton Manning. Again, this one was discussed by Anthony. Drew Brees, who I fight for with the 13 Pro Bowls.
So obviously your number 1 is Tom Brady.
And Joe Montana.
And Joe
2.
Montana. That's what I have too.
But I build in the caveat that if we could include in the GOAT list players still playing, Patrick Mahomes slots into that top 5, in my opinion.
Who do you have him above? Marino? Yeah, I'd probably.
I put him above Drew Brees.
He's won 2 Super Bowls. Marino never won a Super Bowl.
I put him above Drew Brees in my top 5.
Okay.
Because he won 3 Super Bowls, and I think he's going to win more.
Yeah. And then you still have Brett Favre there. It's tough. There's so many things that go into making a team good, making a, just like you said, offensive coordinator or your head coach. Is that important, right, for a quarterback? Absolutely.
Yeah. If Archie Manning, again, I use him, and that's why I like Peyton Manning too. Let me make one more statement about the Manning, about Peyton. You know, as well as I do, that no professional athlete's kid, no great professional, when you're the best, and then your kid has to follow you, that is a tough burden to bear. Sure. And Peyton Manning's all-pro dad, he came behind him and surpassed his father. I mean,
and his son and his brother.
Yeah.
I mean,
John McEnroe called it affluenza. They asked him, well, what about your kids? Why aren't they as great? Well, they have affluenza because when you come behind a father who did X, Y, and Z, you have everything. And you don't have to grind, right? But Peyton Manning grinded anyway, even though he didn't have to.
That's rare. So how many guys do you think that we played football with in the college level or pro level that didn't come from a lower middle class family?
I 100% agree.
2?
The NFL is built. 2? The NFL is built.
I don't know one.
On the lower middle class.
No question. The player has to want it much more than the parents. And if they don't, it doesn't work in football because football's too hard.
It's too hard.
It's too hard.
It's built by men who had to go through adversity.
You get concussions. You have a stinger. Am I going to miss practice? I never missed one Lions practice. Never. Because I'd be caught. Somebody else would come in and play in front of me. And the eye in the sky doesn't lie, right? Yeah. When they get on film and they play well, I would not miss a practice. I tape it up. I had plantar fasciitis. I had a stinger. I had torn muscles in my back, and I would tape it up and go because you had to. In college, it was a little different.
So Tom Brady playing for 20 years. I mean, I know they changed the rules, but it didn't change the fact that you could hit him.
Yeah.
He's the GOAT. The statistical line on him is otherworldly. I mentioned a few of them. You look at Joe Montana, he's knocking at the door right there behind him. I wouldn't object to anyone throwing Peyton Manning right into the middle of the mix with them, with Drew Brees, with Johnny Unitas.
Agreed.
And then you go all the way down to Bart Starr.
And then you got Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. I mean,
tough not to.
It's tough.
Yeah, these are
tough.
And these are the greatest players that we're going to see. Yeah, I mean, we're still watching Mahomes. I mean, he's in the debate right now, but there are going to be more. Aaron Rodgers has a chance to come back and rise up and make it another chapter of his career.
Yeah, and I think he will
if
he can stay healthy.
So, Beer Man, it's sadly it's that time again. So, if you're interested in learning more, you can follow us on any of the major platforms. All the links and information can be found in the show notes of this episode. This was another well-produced, mediocrely researched, yet expertly presented episode of GOAT Quest. Please go online at goatquest.com. Let us know how full of shit you think we are. Fact check us, criticize our voices, our opinions, our haircuts, whatever you want to criticize. But maybe also create a list of your own when you get on there. And maybe buy some merch. Express your love to us with your hard-earned U.S. currency. We're going to miss you. And until next time, go out into the world and be the GOAT at whatever it is that you're doing today.
Until next time.